Episode number 15. Kay stopped speaking, and looked down into the hall. He had spoken sharply, more sharply than he had intended, but he had been quite right. It should have been rewarded with some applause here and there, but everything was quiet. They were all clearly waiting for what would follow. Perhaps the quietness was laying the ground for an outbreak of activity that would bring this whole affair to an end. It was somewhat disturbing that just then the door at the end of the hall opened. The young washerwoman, who seemed to have finished her work, came in and, despite all her caution, attracted the attention of some of the people there. It was only the judge who gave Kay a direct pleasure, as he seemed to have been immediately struck by K.'s words. Until then, he had listened to him standing, as K.'s speech had taken him by surprise while he was directing his attention to the gallery. Now, in the pause, he sat down very slowly, as if he did not want anyone to notice. He took out the notebook again, probably so that he could give the impression of being calmer. "That won't help you, sir," continued Kay. "Even your little book will only confirm what I say." Kay was satisfied to hear nothing but his own quiet words in this room full of strangers, and he even dared casually to pick up the examining judge's notebook and, touching it only with the tips of his fingers as if it were something revolting, lifted it in the air, holding it just by one of the middle pages so that the others on each side of it, closely written, blotted and yellowing, flapped down. "Those are the official notes of the examining judge," he said, and let the notebook fall down onto the desk. "You can read in your book as much as you like, sir. I really don't have anything in this charge book to be afraid of. Even though I don't have access to it as I wouldn't want it in my hand, I can only touch it with 2 fingers. The judge grabbed the notebook from where it had fallen on the desk, which could only have been a sign of his deep humiliation, or at least that is how it must have been perceived, tried to type it up a little, and held it once more in front of himself in order to read from it. The people in the front row looked up at him, showing such tension on their faces that he looked back down at them for some time. Every one of them was an old man, some of them with white beards. Could they perhaps be the crucial group who could turn the whole assembly one way or the other? They had sunk into a state of motionlessness while Kay gave his oration, and it had not been possible to raise them from this passivity even when the judge was being humiliated. "What has happened to me?" continued Kay. With less of the vigor he had earlier, he continually scanned the faces in the first row, and this gave his address a somewhat nervous and distracted character. "What has happened to me is not just an isolated case. If it were, it would not be of much importance, as it's not of much importance to me, but it is a symptom of proceedings which are carried out against men. It's on behalf of them that I stand here now, not for myself alone." Without having intended it, he had raised his voice. Somewhere in the hall, someone raised his hands and applauded him, shouting, "Bravo! Why not then? Bravo! Again I say, bravo!" Some of the men in the first row groped around in their beards. None of them looked round to see who was shouting. Not even Kay thought him of any importance, but it did raise his spirits. He no longer thought it at all necessary that all of those in the hall should applaud him. It was enough if the majority of them began to think about the matter, and if only one of them, now and then, was persuaded